Well, Christmas season can be a way to get together with family and friends, but studies show it's actually one of the most wasteful holidays when it comes to trash that ends up in our landfill. Kiona Rivera talks with a recycling expert on how residents can enjoy a more sustainable holiday season.
Minot recycling coordinator Christina Wolf says from Thanksgiving until the new year, they have always seen a surge in both waste and recycles.
Right after Christmas, we do have our last recycling pickups for the year.
Wolf says many holiday items like lights, decorations, and wrapping paper are not accepted at the facility they send recyclables to in Minnesota. However, many toy boxes are, but with a catch.
Like the Barbies and stuff, that is actually not recyclable because of the plastic material and some of the other components, like, the rubber ties.
But she says there's always a way to work around those items.
You really want to recycle, break it down, pull the stuff apart, and recycle the cardboard mostly.
Studies show that Americans spend an average of $1,000 shopping for gifts, and that doesn't even include holiday decorations. Much of that money goes towards single-use plastics and disposable items. Wolf urges residents to reuse items first before thinking of dropping it in the recycling bin.
Not to be wishful recyclers and just throw stuff that they think is recyclable in there. We want to continue to make sure our loads aren't contaminated, so it's constant education.
She says it all comes down to what is accepted at their material recovery facility in Shakopee, Minnesota. In Minot, I'm Kiona Rivera reporting for your news leader.
The recycling coordinator says their Waste Wizard feature on the My Minot app can give you more information on what's recyclable and what's not. We'll also have her office number on our website where she says you can give her a call for any questions about recycling.